More of the world's creatures depend on pond and river for life than any other habitat. In fact, flowing fresh water makes up just 1/1,000,000th of the planet's water, yet supports almost 50% of its species. No wonder that since human life began, the river has been a source of myth and legend. It has symbolized both life and death. Indeed, it gave birth to our very civilization. Cherokee Indians believed that in the beginning there was only water, and all animals lived upon it. Curious about what was below, they sent the tiny water beetle down to investigate. He brought back soft mud, which grew and became the earth. Rainfall on mountains, the melting of glaciers, a bubbling up from below ground. From all these, the river is born. Yet every river, great or small, begins its journey as no more than a tiny trickling stream. Racing through cracks and gullies, even porous rock, sometimes hitting an impervious layer and bursting out into daylight to continue its urgent journey downwards, ever downwards towards the sea. At what point does a stream become a river? When it's 4 yards wide. If you can't jump it, it's a river. It is the beginning of a river's journey that has always fascinated explorers. Henry Morton Stanley traveled for years up the mighty Nile, till in 1874 he finally found its source. Lake Victoria, I presume. Where the river races across the highlands, its inhabitants have adapted to the demanding environment of the upper reaches. The enormous webbed feet of the torrent duck help it to exhibit almost suicidal daring as it dips and dives in the river's tumultuous white water. The bullhead's underside is flat, and its fins are muscular and spiny, so where the flow is at its most powerful, it wedges itself in crevices, defying the river's pull. The West African hairy frog's tiny lungs make it less buoyant, so it can stay underwater and not be forced downstream. Its hair-like bristles compensate for little lungs by absorbing extra oxygen. The dipper's special feathers keep it bone dry as it imitates a fish to catch the tasty morsels on the riverbed. And plants, too, have adapted. Mosses, ferns, and liverworts cling to rocks or banks, fighting the current every second. On the river's bed, only those with strong roots can survive. How can life thrive in such adverse conditions, like a man choosing to live in a permanent hurricane? Can there be an advantage to such a habitat? Yes. Here, more than anywhere else in the river, the water is clean. Caddisfly larvae only build their homes in clean water. Scientists take their presence with that of the stonefly and mayfly larvae as evidence that the river is not polluted. The river's head is rich, too. These fast-flowing waters are full of oxygen. The sea lamprey inhales the oxygen through special gill holes which allow it to breathe both in and out, while its mouth hangs on for dear life. The sea lamprey travels to the river to breed. In the ocean, it uses its sucker to cling to fish. Here, it uses it to battle the current. It's a world of gripping, grasping, and clutching. Yet no creature has relied as much on the river as man himself. Early life existed by it, on it, and from it. Rivers were the source of civilization itself. The world's first cities arose 6,000 years ago beside the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in Mesopotamia, in Greek, the land between rivers. And across the planet, civilization sprang up in river valleys, growing crops and rearing animals, on the Indus in India, in the wet rice paddies of China's Huanghe River, and on the Nile in Egypt. And what they had in common was all used fresh water for irrigation. Little wonder that the river entered religious belief. Christians, Jews, Hindus, and Buddhists all believed in the four rivers of life, connecting earth to heaven and bringing enlightenment, spiritual power, and nourishment. But the river was death, too. In Greek legend, dead souls had to cross the poisonous river Styx. Above all, the river is movement. France's major river, the Seine, is named after the Roman goddess Sequana, meaning snake-like. And across the planet, fresh water shapes the landscape, meandering and twisting its way to the sea. The earth is marked and divided by flowing bands, all united in one purpose, to carry rainwater from higher to lower ground, always taking the easiest path, an immense force cutting channels and gorges, carving away rock, tearing and scarring the landscape, and creating some of the world's natural wonders. The greatest gash that exists in the Earth's surface, the Grand Canyon, is more than a mile deep, hewn out of the land over 10 million years by the mighty Colorado River. The river's journey may be one of vast distance. The Nile in Africa travels further than from New York to Moscow to reach its ultimate destination, the Mediterranean Sea. And the power of flow can be colossal. At any one moment, a third of the world's fresh water is in the vast Amazon River. That's 7 million cubic meters a minute rushing past, or 53 Olympic-sized swimming pools per second. But it's not just water that rivers carry. China's Yellow River is the muddiest in the world, carrying at any one time 1.5 billion tons of silt, enough mud to build a wall the height of a man, which would encircle the globe 40 times. And as the river moves on, eroding rock and sediment, cutting channels and carrying minerals and mud downstream, the life inside is changing. The slower current allows silt to sink to the bottom, offering a firmer foothold for plants, which provide more oxygen, so the middle section of the river teems with life. And few habitats attract more varied inhabitants. There are 22 species of crocodiles and alligators alone. Not to mention millions of amazing fish, like the Amazon's gigantic piraku, whose tongue is lined with vicious teeth. Or the fearsome piranha, which can form a shoal and strip a cow to its bare bones in minutes. And the huge anaconda snake, heavy as a car and 3 times the length. But elsewhere, there is a quieter place, another habitat, different, yet the same fresh water. It may form from the river itself, or develop independently. The pond, a calmer, stiller environment. A pond is one of the richest habitats on Earth, an independent ecosystem where thousands of plants and animals live together, depending on each other for survival. Whilst a heavily shaded pond will soon lose its richness and vitality, sunlit ponds can produce more plant matter than the most fertile of grasslands. Where there is sunlight, The pond is a unique community, a watery city full of contrasting inhabitants. The water scorpion hunts below the surface, hanging upside down. To breathe, it has a perfect natural snorkel, a long air tube at the tip of its abdomen. As long as it's right side up, the minnow, like most fish, has a natural camouflage. Its underbelly is bright and silvery, merging with ripples and flashes on the water's surface, and its back dull and brownish, invisible when viewed from above. Well, almost. The kingfisher is truly a royal fisherman. Its babies will each eat 18 fish a day. A vision of grace, one of the heaviest and most powerful of all flying birds, the swan mates for life, breeding happily in pond, river, lake, or moat. And in Britain, all swans are owned by the Queen. And just as the river flows through stories like The Wind in the Willows, so the pond's most endearing fairy tale image is the frog, resting on a lily pad. Serene and exquisite, lilies are universal symbols of life and eternal existence. In Hindu scripture, the lily is the flower that was in the beginning, the glorious lily of the great waters. Perhaps it's their size that fires the imagination. The biggest lily pad ever was almost 10 feet across, strong enough for a child to sit on. And whether Jeremy Fisher or just another frog, no creature is more associated with the pond than the amphibian. Almost all breed here. Water eases fertilization and prevents the young from drying out. It also maintains an even temperature and protects from the sun's ultraviolet rays. But the pond has something else, a stillness favored by many creatures for nurturing the next generation. These toadlets will spend most of their lives in wooded areas, but every single one will return, however far, to the pond of their birth when it's time for them to breed. The toads are wise to choose the pond. The tug and pull of the river's current creates serious challenges, and not only for animals. Tantalus, son of Jupiter, revealed the god's secrets and was made to stand forever in a river beneath an apple tree. When he was hungry, the apples floated gently out of his reach. Tantalizing. The animal world has ingenious ways of fighting the river's current. The male midwife toad bundles up to 50 eggs in a long string around his hind legs. He keeps them there for 3 weeks until they hatch into tadpoles and can be allowed to swim free. The Suriname toad carries her babies around on her back to emerge not as eggs, but as fully formed toadlets. It's not hard to understand how water, so essential to life, took on such importance in belief and superstition. In Mesopotamia, offerings of fish, a symbol of wisdom, were made to the freshwater god Enki, from whose arms rivers flowed. And what is worshipped is also feared. The Seminole people of North America dreaded the ultimate aquatic horror, that terrifying water panthers would wrap around swimmers and drown them. But some water dangers are all too real. Disease, bilharzia, hepatitis, polio, cholera, and river blindness are all carried by fresh water or by animals living near it. Including the most lethal creature on Earth, the one which, excluding war and accident, has been responsible for half the deaths on the planet since the Stone Age. The malaria-carrying mosquito. Tiny but deadly. Up to 3 million people die each year from malaria in the African sub-Sahara alone. Not all wetland insects have such a lethal reputation. The dragonfly is one of the most extraordinary species on the planet. 300 million years old, it has something utterly unique: independently moving wings, total movement control. It can come to a complete stop in midair, fly forwards, backwards, turn in any direction, and settle as gently as a floating feather. Some insects prefer to swim. The whirligig beetle creates small waves as a kind of aquatic echolocation device. These amazing navigators pick up the returning waves reflected by objects in their path to avoid bumping into them. It's a device that works most of the time. But collisions aren't the only surface hazard, as these pond skaters are finding out. The water spider avoids the turmoil by heading under the water's surface. It creates a submerged bubble from which it sallies forth to consume its prey, literally a diving bell trapped in a web, woven among the plants and weeds. Plants and weeds whose beauty as they rise out of the water has been captured, transformed into art, and displayed throughout history. Pussy willow, meadowsweet, and buttercups all are pressed, preserved, pasted, painted, and sewn. It was in bulrushes at the water's edge that one of the best known of all river stories occurred. When an Egyptian pharaoh ordered the execution of all Jewish baby boys, one mother hid her son in a cradle in the bulrushes. The baby was Moses, who grew to lead his people out of slavery and to receive the 10 Commandments from the hand of God. And the river is a cleanser of the soul, too. Hindus believe they should bathe in the holy Ganges River at least once in their lifetime, while the ancient Egyptians thought Nile water poured over religious statues had healing properties. They also worship the Nile's crocodiles, adorning them with crystal and gold. There is no record of how long these fierce river creatures put up with such gentle fussing. In its lower reaches, the river is at its most majestic. The gentler flow allows silt to build up on the inside bends of its curves. These muddy banks are homes for burrowing mammals. Like the tiny water shrew, for its size at least as ferocious as the crocodile, it hunts with total fearlessness. The largest of all river mud lovers, the hippopotamus, creates its own suntan lotion, secreting a fluid when it goes on land to protect it from the sun's rays. In the water, its protection is to expose only nostrils, eyes, and ears. And this male hippo's yawn is not sleepiness. It's his way of courting the female. The deep lower reaches also provide a home for one of the most enchanting river mammals, the freshwater boto dolphin. These beautiful creatures are the heroes of many Amazon stories. It's believed that at night they turn into mortals, leaving their romantic sunken forests to seduce human maidens. The beaver was hunted almost to extinction in Europe, but flourishes in North America, where he has not only become a national symbol, but has given us a model of one of the most important feats of modern engineering. The beaver is the only mammal other than man to interfere with the river's journey to the sea. The beaver's only way of escaping danger is by diving underwater, so it spends its life beavering away, creating depth by building dams. As these new depths often become small lakes, the little beaver is actually creating new habitats. Though none as vast as those created by man's manipulation of the river's journey, which has grown to extraordinary proportions. 1/5 of the world's power comes from hydroelectricity, hence the building of some of the most impressive engineering structures ever seen. The world's largest dam, the Itipu in Paraguay, holds enough water to fill 70 billion bathtubs. In Egypt, a new dam meant a rescue operation for old temples. The 3,000-year-old Folly temples were moved stone by stone away from the River Nile to make way for the colossal Aswan Dam. The temples were painstakingly reassembled out of harm's way in a project which took 20 years to complete. Fish sometimes need rescuing too. Most dams are far too high to leap over, even for the athletic salmon. So some have fish ladders, which break the ascent into manageable steps. But it is man that may need rescuing from America's most famous river. Huckleberry Finn's Mississippi raft adventures of avoiding snakes and catching catfish were nothing compared to the river's latest and greatest threat. The Mississippi is slowly adjusting its course and could join a smaller parallel river, a diversion which would leave New Orleans and Baton Rouge high and dry. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has been brought in to stop this meander, but the mighty Mississippi may prove unstoppable. And where man's will enters the battle against the river's power and creates dams and reservoirs, the result is one of the river's strangest and most ghostly images, the drowned village. The relic of a lost community. Giving us one of the most haunting water myths of all, that the bell continues to toll from the deep. Surely no habitat on Earth expresses itself in such extreme ways as the river. River rapids occur where the river flows from hard to softer, more easily eroded rock. They are among the most powerful and feared water forces on Earth, washing away great boulders as they force huge weights of water through narrow channels. But the movement of water at its most spectacular can occur anywhere along the river's journey when it drops suddenly to a new bed, the waterfall. Sometimes falling colossal distances, Venezuela's Angel Falls tumble 1,000 meters from a ledge twice the height of New York's World Trade Center. And where nature is at its most extreme, man strives to conquer it. Or perhaps we should say, woman. Annie Anson Taylor was the first person to go over Niagara Falls and survive. Only 6 others have equaled her feat. Annie became known as Queen of the Mist. Rivers provide us with other recreational wonders. River bores happen when spring tides force water upstream, sometimes as fast as 40 miles an hour. But bores aren't the only things that go against the river's flow, nor are humans the only species who challenge its might. The Southeast Asian big-headed turtle has an unusual habit of climbing waterfalls. This feisty little reptile uses its long tail for support as it crawls up the waterfalls like the most daring of mountaineers. But even the brave little turtle might think twice about taking on this natural wonder. The vast Iguazu Falls in Brazil are actually 275 waterfalls, merging into one immense curtain of water that stretches across a sweep of land more than 2.5 miles wide. The very end of a river's journey is sometimes its grandest feature, a massive expanse of land and water, the delta, where fresh water pours into the sea. The Amazon's flow at its delta is so powerful that 100 miles out to sea, far beyond the sight of land, the Atlantic Ocean is still fresh water. The delta marks the river's death, the end of its journey as it crosses the boundary between fresh and salt water. But this ending is also a new beginning. For the river's journey is circular. This living, flowing band joins with the sea only to be reborn. Already the water is rising as moisture, borne back on the wind to high ground, to fall as rain, and begin again the great journey.
The Eyewitness Museum, created by combining traditional filmmaking techniques with state-of-the-art graphics, stripping away the mysteries of nature and science to reveal the essence of each subject, bringing the world into sharp focus. The making of Eyewitness. The distinct style of the Eyewitness books is the basis for each of the programs. Each half-hour episode is based on a book title. The Eyewitness book's visual style gives the program makers a starting point and a challenge. The challenge of transferring clarity and super realism into moving images and sound. Now let's take a look behind the scenes at the making of Pond and River. Many animals have been filmed throughout the Eyewitness series, but none more elegant than Pond and River's ice swan. A professional ice sculptor carved the swan from a single block of ice. He uses only pure distilled water for his blocks. His tools range from the chainsaw to the chisel. He works quickly to free the magnificent form of the swan from its crystalline vault. Water is the sculptor's final polish. Under the hot lights of the Eyewitness studio, this actor will literally melt away in front of the camera. The crew have to work fast to get the shots before the swan loses definition. The sculpture is set on a rotating table to give it an easy, graceful floating motion. Rippling reflections require a lapping pool of water. The images come from a television monitor hung upside down. It's often said never work with animals or children, but the Eyewitness crew live by a different code. Pond and River required a baby to sit in the centre of a large lily pad. The lily pad came from London's Kew Gardens. The baby was a professional. When your actor is too young to say cheese, the director has to go to extreme lengths to coax a smile. Fortunately, the frog needs no coaxing to hop and was added in later. For the baby Moses scene, the bulrush set had to be built. Having a baby in the studio affects everyone. Even the camera is dressed for the nursery. Here, the camera takes on a searching point of view. It's on a hunt, winding its way through the bulrushes until it finds a baby in a basket.